Yeah, I guess what I would say is that it does feel like working on a project is a little bit like looking at a fractal, where when you zoom in on any area of the fractal, like immediately, like, more depth comes into
Right.
focus, where then you realize like, oh, there's a lot of details in this particular area.
Hey everybody, Tanner here with WAGMI Ventures. On today's episode, we have Keone Han, co-founder and CEO at Monad. For anyone who's new, this is the WAGMI Ventures podcast, where we do snapshots with interesting builders and founders from across Web3. Check out wagmiventures.io to learn more about the syndicate behind the podcast. But for now, let's get into it with Keone at Monad. All right. Hey, everybody. I'm here today with Keone Han, co-founder and CEO at Monad. Keone, how are you doing today?
Hey, doing super well. How are you, Tanner?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for coming on. I know we have a ton to talk about, and I'm excited to chat. So maybe to start, my understanding of your background is that you were really a quant trader for quite some time and ultimately ended up leading a team at Jump Crypto. And so I think my first curiosity is really like, can you tell us a story of maybe going way back when, how you got into crypto, and then maybe the story of what insights along the journey sort of coalesced into the basis of Monad?
Sure thing. I joined Jump Trading in late 2013 and was at Jump until early 2022. And I guess during my time at Jump, most of it was spent on the high-frequency trading side of the business. High-frequency trading is about building really high-performance systems and using machine learning and linear regression and other techniques to make powerful short-term price predictions that ultimately get fed into this really fast trading system that can go and trade a number of different assets. So my personal introduction into crypto was actually as a trader, because in the crypto space, there's just so many different assets, and then many derivatives that like perpetuals or expiring futures, all based on the same underlying asset. So it's just a really rich space from a trading perspective, rich in the sense of the amount of data that's out there. And that was, I guess, the original introduction for me personally into crypto, just as a trader. But in mid 2021, my HFT team joined the crypto division of Jump, where we spent a lot of time working on DeFi protocols and understanding the space that was out there from a DeFi protocol perspective as well as a blockchain perspective. So it was just a really good experience in terms of seeing the state of the world, seeing the state of the art in DeFi, and then also reflecting back on our previous experience in the traditional finance space, where you have NASDAQ that processes billions of transactions per day, and thinking about how to try to bridge the gap between those two.
Love it. Perfect. So, maybe a good place to start after that would be, what is Monad and what are you guys building there?
Sure. Monad is a fully Ethereum compatible blockchain, meaning bytecode compatible from an app perspective, and Ethereum RPC compatible. So from an infrastructure perspective, like MetaMask, Etherscan, the Graph, things like that. It's a fully Ethereum compatible blockchain that offers 10,000 transactions per second of throughput, 1 second block times, and 1 second finality, ultimately by rebuilding the Ethereum virtual machine execution stack from the ground up to introduce parallelization and Superscalar pipelining, ultimately to deliver these performance improvements while still continuing to support the rich landscape of Ethereum apps and infrastructure.
Terrific. Okay. So, in some of my reading, I came across a quote of yours where you had said something to the effect of this, which was, the power of a smart contract blockchain is that it enables connected apps and objects. The power is in the interconnectivity. However, that power is currently very constrained by limitations of existing systems, just not enough to support usage at scale. And I think my first question, digging in a little bit more on what you're building, is, how does Monad address this issue?
Monad addresses the issue that you're mentioning, which, yeah, I completely agree, would summarize as if you imagine the kinds of applications that normal people, like non-crypto natives, use, just the scale of that is substantial. Like if you are building an application and you want it to get to number one on the App Store on iOS, that means you have at least a couple million daily active users. Even if you had a million daily active users and then those users are transacting, let's say 100 times per user per day, that's 100 million transactions per day, which then if we convert back to the transactions per second, because I think in the crypto space, we're all more familiar with the TPS metric, 100 million transactions per day is 1,000 transactions per second. So I think, that one app that gets some semblance of mass user adoption is going to require more throughput than exists in blockchains today. So we need something, we need to make substantial, like multiple orders of magnitude of improvement in order to build apps that ultimately, many like normal non-crypto natives will use every day. So that's really that's our team's focus, is addressing this scalability problem by making a couple of significant architectural changes to Ethereum to ultimately alleviate bottlenecks. I'll mention those really briefly as pipelining within the consensus mechanism, number one. Number two, asynchronous execution, aka deferred execution. Number three, of transaction execution. And number four, high performance state backend for accessing contract state. And we could talk more about each of those if you're interested. But at the high level, there are several different bottlenecks in how Ethereum transactions are executed right now. And it's necessary to address all of these different bottlenecks in order to allow the Ethereum virtual machine to scale.
Love it. Yeah. Okay. So, maybe we could take a deeper look into each of those bottlenecks, because I think people would be very interested in hearing how your team thinks about each one in turn.
Sure thing. I think the first thing that I want to mention is just to give a little bit of a mental model of what a blockchain is, how it, what it is really doing. So the thing I would describe about a blockchain is that it's a bunch of servers around the world that are all talking to each other and maintaining consistency about a global state. So all of these servers are perfect replicas of each other. They all have exactly the same state. And the goal is to be able for these servers to communicate about as much state as possible and therefore process as many transactions as possible, therefore support as many users as possible. So I guess with that in mind, the first question that comes to mind when thinking about this, these disparate servers that are around the world, is how do you keep all those machines in sync with each other? And that is what consensus is all about. Distributed consensus is the question of maintaining consistent state among nodes that are completely geographically distributed, completely decentralized, and how to do that at scale to be able to support hundreds or thousands of servers that are all participating and staying in sync with each other. So the first area that Monad introduces significant performance improvements and scalability improvements is at the consensus layer. And in particular, Monad BFT is a new high-performance consensus mechanism. It is a variant of the hot stuff consensus mechanism with pipelining enabled and with the improvement from 3 stages of communication of consensus to 2 stages of communication of consensus in order to allow all of these nodes to stay in sync with each other. I guess just some other things to mention. There's a bunch of other research improvements that our team has made to help Monad BFT be really performant. Some of those, just to mention briefly, are a shared mempool. So there's a high performance system that's allowing all the nodes to communicate about pending transactions, aka the mempool. And also this allows us, the system, to send much smaller block proposals by only referring to all of those transactions by their hash, which is significant reduction in the overall size of a proposal. Beyond that, just a bunch of other improvements that have an effect on the efficiency of communication so that block proposals as well as votes can be disseminated through the network very efficiently. So overall, this is, and this is just 1 out of 4. So I probably should stop talking about this one in depth because we'll run out of time with the others. But the Monad BFT is really high performance consensus, allowing all these nodes to stay in sync with each other.
Got it. Super interesting. So maybe if we do have time, maybe we can circle back on the other ones. But, one recurring question on this show is kind of this curiosity with some of the earliest surprises that always, inevitably come up in the life of a new project. And so I wanted to put that question to you, where if there were maybe 1 or 2 surprises you had to kind of identify as especially salient or especially important that you weren't expecting to be important, whether in building or whether in the market, et cetera. I'm curious, how would you respond to that?
I guess what I would say is that it does feel like working on a project is a little bit like looking at a fractal, where when you zoom in on any area of the fractal, like immediately, like, more depth comes into focus, where then you realize like, oh, there's a lot of details in this particular area. But then also there's all these other areas of the fractal as well. So I think that's probably the biggest thing is that, and this isn't probably not just true of crypto startups, but startups in general, there's a lot to do and prioritization is incredibly important. And knowing when you can zoom in on areas of that fractal, when it's better to just treat it like a black box right now, that can be really crucial to the speed at which you can get things done. Of course, everything should just be done as expediently as possible, but knowing that how to prioritize what things matter right now is really, really important.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Okay. So Monad has a developer grant program that, from what I could tell, it lists several verticals of Web3 that all kind of, each one has interesting stories and histories and projects happening in that space. But it's verticals like high fidelity DeFi, payments and commerce, infrastructure, gaming, NFTs, identity and ownership, etc. I think I was curious, maybe from your vantage point, in your opinion, like on the application side of things, what types of applications do you think will become more prevalent over the coming years in Web3? And then slightly different question, which applications do you think, or which application types do you think would drive the most Web3 adoption?
I think that social, and more specifically applications that have an element of social, are really going to be the cornerstone of Web3 growth. So, everyone, as soon as you say social right now, everyone thinks of friend tech. I think friend tech is a great example of, something that they probably hope to get to be a lot bigger, a lot more expansive in terms of functionality and what people can do on the platform. But at its heart right now, friend tech is about sort of encoding the social graph, the graph of like people's friendships, into something where it's tracked on the blockchain. You can have like some sort of tokenized ownership of other people, of other people's like social presence. But then there's a lot of other stuff that I think could be built on top of that. And so I don't know, I guess it's just a very vague idea right now, but the shift from single player games in the like 90s, 2000s, et cetera, or even before that, to multiplayer, where now like almost every big game is multiplayer, and it's all about the hardest enemies that you fight are not AI driven enemies. They're like playing other players who are also really skilled, who also understand the meta game. So I think in the same way, the richest experiences are just interacting with other people, and the apps that are going to be most successful that leverage blockchain technology are leveraging the fact that there's all this interconnectivity coming from shared global state, and are just that can take advantage, that can like have the social graph kind of embedded in the application, but can also be something that's really fun.
Love it. Yeah. That makes a ton of sense. So, you guys recently raised a round led by Dragonfly to, it seemed like, to kind of expand the team and continue the mission. And I think my question here is curiosity around, what was fundraising amidst the current market sentiment kind of like? And then how will that raise sort of translate into better accomplishing your goals?
Yeah, I think it's definitely a really tough market right now. I have a lot of empathy for all the teams that are trying to raise right now. It's tough. I'm, definitely hopeful that it'll get better over time. For us, it was, a good decision so that we could expand our team and just really work as quickly as possible to get the Monad mainnet out in the open so that other people can start utilizing it and building other things on top of it. Like at the end of the day, a layer one blockchain it's just infrastructure. It's just, like the thing that, everyday people are going to care about is the applications on the blockchain, not the blockchain itself. They're probably not even going to be aware of whether the app that they're interacting with is on Monad or on some other environment. But so it has to be out in the wild. People have to be able to leverage it to build really powerful apps. So, of course, we should do whatever we can to make that happen as soon as possible.
Definitely. Okay. So let's talk about the space a little more broadly, since we touched on it a little bit just in kind of the market sentiment of the raise, where I think my first question about the space would be, what do you think Web3 is getting right now in 2023? And where do you think things could be done a little bit better?
I think that Web3 is getting the community aspect correct. I think that ultimately community is what is going to cause our industry to ultimately be successful. Because it is really unique. Like if you look at any other, even the really hot, really hyped sectors right now, like AI is really hyped. They don't have strong community around there. Like in crypto, there's, constantly people who are constantly on Twitter, constantly following the news, constantly learning about new projects, giving encouragement, posting memes, showing love. I think that that's a superpower, especially in this day and age when we understand how valuable attention is. So I think that's what we're getting right overall, and people don't take themselves too seriously. And the projects that are really successful and the builders that are really successful make themselves available to the community and answer questions and get feedback and learn from that. So that's honestly, I think the thing that is most powerful about our space.
Great. So next question for you would be, if you could maybe impart to your earlier self some wisdom from your present state, time machine, go back, tell yourself something or a few things that maybe would make the journey a little easier or have informed decisions in certain ways. I'm curious, what advice would that be? What feels most important to kind of pass back to yourself if kind of this is a way of getting at, some advice for other crypto founders?
Yeah, I think I would more heavily prioritize organization and organizational skills, both within myself and then also, when building a team, really treasuring super organizedness more highly and almost making it like a KPI for myself personally. Like, how organized can I be? How quickly can I, which isn't to say like doing organization just to waste time or like,
right.
It's like, straightening all of the shoes in front of my door to always be like, parallel to each other like that. We don't need to be OCD, but I think like, just being extremely fast at responding to any inbound, processing, maintaining inbox zero, having, I don't know, just basic things. And then also, setting that expectation for everyone else that joins our team and looking for that as like one of the key skills. Because I guess to go back to your previous question about, like what do we not do as well in the Web3 space, I feel like we're not that organized in general. And a lot of things slip through the cracks and, everyone's having fun, but like it also, we have to execute. And a lot of times that requires exceptional organizational skill.
Yeah, that makes a ton of sense. Okay. So if I were to ask you the future of crypto is blank. How would you fill in the blank from your vantage point?
I would say the future of crypto is social. It is embracing, it is building applications that help us stay connected to friends and allow us to build connections with people in our communities and form communities. I think that the reason why NFTs were incredibly successful in 21 was because they allowed people to expand their identities and make, being part of certain communities as part of their identities. And I think helping that spread to the rest of the world, identifying some specific applications that, that leverage that dynamic, that's going to be what really pushes crypto forward.
Love it. Okay. So last question here for you. What is your team working on right now? And what's the best way for people to follow along on the journey?
Our team is working on launching our first public testnet, currently anticipated to be end of this year or the very start of next year. And then, beyond that, launching the mainnet, currently expected to be mid next year. And I guess the best way to follow along with us is just by following along with our Twitter, monad_XYZ, and then just, engaging with our community, joining our Discord, joining our Telegram there.
Amazing. Okay. Thank you so much for the time. Really appreciate getting to learn more about what's going on over there, and really excited to follow along as things continue to progress and evolve. So thanks again, and have a great rest of your week here.
Thanks. Same to you.
Okay. Bye-bye.